Good afternoon, cult members, and welcome to the Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean.
I'm Janice.
And welcome to our spoiler discussion reaction to Doctor Who, Flux, ... the Halloween Apocalypse.
Yes.
So they announced that this was going to be a six issue. It's a 6 issue. It's a 6-episode run of this last season with Jodie, and it's going to be one continuous story. And this was the first one. I'm actually surprised they're actually naming each of the episodes, but
why?
Because they call the whole thing Flux, so you're calling.
Oh,
it's like each chapter of a book kind of feel to it and stuff. So, initial disclaimers. We've gone through. I think we started with Capaldi, like second season with Capaldi, and done episode by episode reviews as they have been coming out. Well, those will be in here. I'll link the playlist in here somewhere, right about here. So go back and watch those about how we kind of feel about Doctor Who, and we really love it. Obviously, I've got a Doctor Who tattoo, so and these are going to be spoiler reviews, reactions right after the episodes as they drop. So just so you're warned.
Yes.
Initial thoughts.
I liked it.
I did too.
I like one of the better ones in the whole Jodie Whittaker.
Yes.
Season, chapter, whatever you want, Doctor.
Right.
We were talking about, like, there seemed to be some really good special effects, but then they still kept with the kind of campy practical stuff.
Yeah, the Satorns, there we go, are greatly terrible practical makeup.
They're potato guys.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And then Carvanista? There we go. Carvanista.
We'll get it out. Dave, John, Dan. We'll get to Dan in a minute. But like simple names.
His practical makeup, costume, whatever, was impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, the mouth and kind of the facial expressions and stuff.
Swarm, his porcelain skin, and his sisters kind of.
I thought they were a little more old school, kind of like the spider chick.
Yeah.
You know, kind of. You're like, you put some glitter on their face and some crystal sticking out of the side.
Yeah. The Tim Shaw. From the
Tim Shaw, and that's kind of what I thought he was when
it.
we first saw him. I was like, is Tim Shaw back? But yeah.
I've been very adamant about how much I have loved Jodie and how Chibnall kind of screwed her in that first season.
Yeah.
And what they were trying to do and how they were trying to change Doctor Who didn't work the way they wanted it to. The second season was so much better.
Yeah.
And the reason I think that it was so much better is there was stakes. That first season, there's no stakes.
Yeah.
They're just telling individual stories, and there's no ramifications of what the Doctor does or the fam or anything like that.
Yeah.
And it was, and then the second season with the Master showing up, and like they still had individual stories they were telling, but they had an overall arc, and decisions the Doctor made had consequences to it constantly.
Yeah.
And that's what this felt like. Because they reintroduced the Division and introduced Swarm and the Flux itself, and her like being off her game, and there's tension between her and Yaz. Like there's stakes to everything that's going on, and that's and I love that. I want there to be stakes, and I think that's what this generation, this run of this Doctor hasn't had.
Yeah, definitely in that first season. And I mean, I get it that you're trying to establish who this new Doctor is, but it was not good.
It was not good. There are some really good episodes in there.
Yeah.
Some really good standalone episodes in there. But Doctor Who has a 800 episode journey,
Yeah.
800 plus episode journey, and there's going to be episodes in there that just don't work, and there's going to be episodes everybody's going to talk about for the rest of time.
Yeah.
Don't Blink is one of them. Heaven Sent is one of them, and so you just kind of have to go with the flow and the ebb and flow of new writers and new doctors and you just kind of get used to that.
Yeah.
With all of that being said, with this particular episode, the idea of them doing one story arc, Chibnall has been talking about. He's had this plan for what he wanted to do with his time with the Doctor from the beginning, and so this is a kind of feels like a culmination. I haven't had any cocktails today, so it's going to be a thing. Let's talk about a couple. It's really good to see that Chibnall. You could always tell when Chibnall writes the episodes because they're so much better than everything else.
Yeah,
I'm not complaining about the writers' room at all. They were following the instructions they were given, but still, it just. Anyways, we're done bitching about the other old stuff. Let's talk about this episode some more. I want to talk about Dan. With when we had the fan with Yaz, Ryan, and Graham, we talked a lot about how with three of them, one of them often had nothing to do.
Yep.
And
they were off on an away mission, or a couple times it was two. They would do the girls and the boys or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it always felt like there's too many people.
There was too many people, and it never really felt like they could have their time to build their character and build their trust within the Doctor.
Yeah.
Outside of Yaz. Yaz always, because it was always the girls going off and doing something, right? And so Yaz and the Doctor always had their time together, and they had a much more of a rapport between Mandy and Jodie.
Yeah.
Than we did with Ryan and Graham, and it's not anybody's fault. It just sometimes it's just how it works.
I kind of feel like Ryan and Graham's journey was to grow closer together.
Yes.
After Nan died.
Yeah.
So that was accomplished.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So they can go.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah. So with the introduction of Dan, with this story arc, felt when they announced it that John Bishop was going to join the show, it felt weird to me. I'm just going to say it. It felt really weird to get rid of two companions and not give the girls a chance to go and have fun with each other.
And there was some, I don't know, outrage is a little strong, but there was some discussion on the internet about the same thing.
Right.
People saying, can't we just let the girls have a little bit of time together? We don't have a whole lot of time now, at least with Chibnall and Jodie, so...
They actually, the article I was reading before we started recording, it was from the Radio Times, and they did a live tweet along, whatever, on their page. And one of the things they talked about was they were actually going to do a 10 episodes final season arc with Chibnall and Jodie before COVID happened. And so they had to change. So they are taking the base idea of what they had there, and instead of doing a 10 episode run, they're doing a 6 episode run.
Right.
They're doing a holiday special. They're doing something for the 100th anniversary of the BBC, and then the final episode, which will be in 2023 or whatever. But the idea of having I've been wanting to do this. Hi. Hi, how are you? Dan being introduced the way he was. The idea of him giving tours at the Liverpool Museum, even though he doesn't work there. Them telling him you kind of have to stop doing that, and then they show him at a food bank, working at a food bank and helping everybody, and that was really cool. And then he goes home, and when he gets home, he has no food in the fridge. Yeah. He has no food in the cupboards. He's got a bunch of late notices, past due things. So he is, without saying it, he's giving of his time to something outside of himself.
Right.
Which is a very interesting companion to add to the TARDIS. Because a lot of companions, when they get there, not all, but a lot of companions when they get there are very selfish, or they're very isolated in their own little world, and them going out into the universe and all of space and time and expanding their thought process is their journey.
Yeah.
Well, Dan's already there in that journey.
Yeah. And a lot of them are, all of the new companions have wanted to go. They're like, take me with you. I want to go. This, whether they were infatuated with the doctor, lots of female companions, lots of male doctors. So whether they were infatuated with them or just infatuated with the idea of going to other places, which several of the companions wanted to do in the beginning. And then all of a sudden they're like, now they're homesick, right?
It happened with Bill. Bill specifically is
Bill and Rose.
Rose. Yeah.
He seems like he's going to be more of the companion that doesn't necessarily, like, he was kidnapped.
Right.
And
right.
now he's out in space.
Right.
Now he's out there and he's, we've already seen, he's like, wow, this is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Why can we breathe when the doors open and all that? But he may be more of a hesitant, and they may, because he's kind of giving of his time and stuff, he may have to be more convinced that he can do good on a broader scale than he could have on Earth to get him to go with, instead of, I want to go with because you're cute, or because, it's like you said, all about me, where they may have to prove to him that he can make a difference
at home. Well, although his home is in his pocket right now,
but he can make a difference on a broader scale in the universe instead of just on Earth.
Yeah, especially with the introduction of, I'm really sorry, we're right out of the episode, so we know some of the names, but the Savarans, the dogs, are coming to save the humans, like him going off. Carvanista is the character, I think. But them kind of taking him like, oh, you're selfish, let's go help somebody else, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. That concept is kind of laid there. Doesn't necessarily mean that's where they're going to go, but I like this idea of having Dan there with this obviously selfless character who is probably going to try to do something stupid, like try to save the doctor, even though we're losing her, and we haven't had a doctor, or we haven't had a companion die in a really long time.
Right.
So it'd be really interesting. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but it'd be an interesting story part that he sacrifices himself to save Yaz, or try to save the doctor, and then the doctor has to regenerate anyways. So like that
maybe. I mean, Bill kind of died. I mean, she died.
She died, and then the puddle girl with the star in her eye came back and saved her, and
sorta.
And
I mean, her essence.
And
is it really her?
And the pawns died in the past, but they But it would be interesting. The self-sacrifice. I'm trying to think of the episode from Classic Who, where the companion self-destructs, hits the self-destruct button to destroy the Daleks, and that's
he's a guy.
Yeah,
and I can't think of what his name is. I can picture him.
But that devastated Doctor Who fans back then, and it's still talked about, 30 years, 40 years later. Let's talk about all the, we talked about the dog people trying to come and save go ahead.
We forgot to mention Dan may be special.
Yes, that's a good point. It kind of ties into Carvanista. Tried to use this Jedi mind trick on him to get him to comply, and he's like, "Why do you keep talking to me like that?" And he hits the thing, and then Dan's like, "What is going on? It's a really good costume." So there's obviously something there with Dan.
Maybe he's not actually A human?
Human living in the shadow of Liverpool's football stadium maybe makes you a little not susceptible to outside influences.
But they showed us when the swarm, is that his name, showed up and undisguised his sister, who was living in the Arctic Circle, in a house, in a regular old house with windows. You don't live in the Arctic Circle with a regular house
no,
with windows.
Yeah, whatever.
Maybe he is disguised. Maybe he's somebody else.
Maybe that would be an interesting kind of story part too, because if you're going to hide somebody in plain sight with the swarm saying he's been fighting the Doctor for a really long time and she doesn't remember, hiding somebody inside the TARDIS itself would be really kind of cool. Like that would be.
Well, yeah. I'm just saying.
I like that more than him being
he
dying.
Could be anybody or anything, any other alien.
Yeah.
Just disguised. Obviously, there's this technology, and they don't know who they are because the Swarm sister didn't know until he started to vaporize her that she was somebody else.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. The big bad of this episode is Swarm, but also the Flux. The Flux is a giant space cloud, full-on Galactus absorbing planets, and everything that it touches evaporates. Everything that's matter evaporates around it. And the Carvastinistas, sure, use Carvanas. Their ships are resistant to this flux thing, and so they encompass the Earth at the end of the episode. And the Doctor uses time vortex. Energy. Time vortex. And it's time vortex energy. And shoots it out of the TARDIS at the Flux, and nothing happens. And that was how the episode ends.
Yeah.
So there's no obvious thing to kind of like stop this thing.
I do see a comparison, a similarity between how Swarm made his sister's human husband, whatever,
evaporate,
and the way the Flux is making, like when they showed at the end, it was taking that planet that there was actual life on, that they all disintegrated kind of the same way, which is interesting.
Again, what we're talking about, what I was talking about with the not having, there's the stakes are not there, right? Having something like this that can't be easily defeated is a nice touch.
You can't talk it down, right? You can't negotiate.
That was one of the things I loved about Capaldi, is he talked everybody down most of the time, and when he didn't talk them down, it was obvious that he could do some poo, and so tell them I came the long way around, and and then he did some no talking in that episode. Anyways, Heaven Sent's amazing. But there's definitely something there that's going to be interesting to kind of go forward with the Swarm and Flux. Swarm, not the Swarm, and the Flux and the Devourer of Worlds and that kind of concept. It's just going to be really interesting to kind of. Oh, and by the way, the Weeping Angels are there.
Yep.
And so you have the Weeping Angels, you have the Satarns. So the Satarns are like, there's chaos. It's time to go to battle. Like,
and then whoever it was that was in that house, that Diane, I think her name was, that Dan was going to go on the date with, called her into the house.
Yes. So there's all that going on, and then you have, what was his name? William. Joseph Williamson, who was actually a character, a real person, who built tunnels and stuff in Liverpool. So they made a point of kind of starting the episode with him outside of Yaz and the Doctor hanging upside down because Carvana had captured him and it was going to kill him, and they very much the escaping on the brooms kind of thing and stuff.
First, it was like the iceberg or the floating piece of wood from the Titanic. The two of them managed to get on, and then it broke in half, and then they were on brooms. Very Halloween. There was a lot of themes kind of going on with this. There was obviously the Halloween, because that, it's the title. But there were also lots of little nuggets from old Doctor Who's.
And that's where I was going next.
Like you said, it took the long way around, and Claire, not Clara, Claire said that. And
told Dan to, nice to meet you, Dan, run for your life.
Run for your life. There was...
The outpost station is called Rose.
Yep.
With Vendor. We'll get into Vendor in a second. There was maybe I programmed these handcuffs when I had a Scottish accent. Which was really a nice little touch. And so then Jodie trying to do Capaldi's Scottish accent just while she's flying on a broom was just not working. There was the thing with Claire, that she ran into the Doctor and Yaz before that the Doctor and Yaz had met them, and then she got abducted by the Weeping Angels, and then they show her landing wherever she ended up landing, whatever time period she ended up landing and stuff like that. So that's kind of a callback to Don't Blink, where they run into the Doctor because they haven't met her yet. It's like that. That's kind of a nice little, at least storytelling trope, that if you are deep into the Doctor Who stuff, you go like, oh, I recognize that.
Yeah.
Which again,
almost there.
You're not quite there. Yeah. But the idea of all of that that they talked about with the first season with Chibnall and Jodie, they didn't want to do any references to previous Doctor Who. They wanted to all stand on their own, and all the Doctor Who fans who know all these Easter eggs and stuff are like, we want this, and now they just been throwing them out like crazy in this episode, and I really appreciated that. Let's talk about Vendor for a second, and then we'll talk about what we think is going to happen going forward. Vendor is on Outpost, Operation Outpost Rose. He's loves his job because the view is amazing, but he's obviously done with all of whatever, and he's just reporting what's going on. Like there's nothing going on. I'm here to report for the 20,000th time that there's nothing going on.
And I hate all of you.
Yeah, I hate all of you. Yeah. So Vendor, the actor who's playing Vendor, was Grey Worm in Game of Thrones. Yep. And you wouldn't know it because he's got dreads and facial hair and stuff like that. So it took me a minute. But they've made a really big point of saying how much you're going to love this character and you're going to love him in this role. And so I'm wondering if they're laying some groundwork with Dan, with Vendor, with them being companions going forward. It's not. I'm not saying that, but it's kind of feels like when they did the change to Jodie, they had all knew everything. Mm-hmm. But most everybody, the Doctor stays and the companions change, or the companion stays and the Doctor changes. So it kind of feels like
for some continuity
and stuff
for the first season.
I just whenever he gets the chance to be in something genre wise, I'm totally down for it.
Yeah,
so let's go. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it kind of feels like Yaz might go, and they might do something where she just can't, kind of like almost happened with Clara, like she just can't deal with the change and just goes home. But
I think I agree, but I think it's much more of she's finally just going to call the Doctor on her shit. She tried to do it on this episode where the Doctor keeps having these episodes where she keeps seeing these visions with Swarm and stuff like that, and not saying anything to Yaz. And Yaz is supposed to be her friend, her companion on the ship. And then Yaz kind of called her on it, and Doctor's like, no, I'm fine. And Yaz is like, no, you're not. You need to talk to me. And then something happens and the subject changes and whatever. And that was kind of a trope, not a trope, but it was something that they talked about last season too. Yeah. That the Doctor needs to open up to Yaz.
Well, and Yaz did Dan asked her who she was. And so she said, I'm Yasmin, whatever her last name is, and I'm from Sterling. No.
Sussex?
No,
I
it's
don't
not
remember.
Sussex. Anyway, but she, I was a police woman, whatever, and so it's almost like hey, don't forget, this is who Yaz used to be.
Yeah, yeah.
And, maybe that's what she's going to go back to.
Yeah. Let's talk about what we think we're going to get out of this. We talked about right after the episode that the Flux feels like not necessarily a destroying of the universe, because they made a point of saying many times the Doctor said, I've always wanted to see what the end of the universe looked like, and now I'm going to witness it. And the end of the universe was talked about many times with the Flux coming in.
But she knows that this isn't the end of the universe,
right,
because they've been to when Earth...
when was still there.
Well, no, when David Tennant and Rose went to the end of Earth, that's where they got Skin.
Yes.
Agatha, Jessica.
Yes.
I can't think of what her name is.
That's the end of Earth, not the end of the universe.
Right.
But what the... Yeah. Moisturize me.
Moisturize me. I can't think of what her name is.
Clara. No. But I feel, at least the way it kind of laid out, especially with the end of the episode, it feels like not necessarily the end of the universe, but the universe, the Flux bringing everything in this universe into a new one.
Yeah.
And the reason I kind of feel that way is we had all this stuff that happened with the Timeless Child in the last season, and a lot of people didn't like it. I think I liked it. I keep going back and forth with the idea. They changed the rules with Matt Smith anyways, and never telling me the rules, and changing how many regenerations a Time Lord gets and stuff like that.
If you've watched all of the Doctor Who, you can't get that upset. That
Continuity is out the window.
Yeah.
Just ask Moffat. He doesn't care.
Yeah. So I'm ambivalent about it. It wasn't my favorite. I wasn't shocked. I was more confused. But I'm ambivalent.
I'm okay with it. But the idea, if you're going to not necessarily retcon it, but reset the board, which is what you end up doing with a new Doctor every time anyways.
Yeah.
If you're going to reset the board and you tell your story that the universe is being absorbed into a new universe with new rules and new timelines and new everything, it could be something that they're doing. I mean, they're dealing with the multiverse a lot in the MCU and Elseworlds in the DC stuff, and so us as fans have at least a little bit better understanding of what multiple versions of something could be.
Right. Well, and we know because Tennant left Rose in the parallel dimension, right? And you weren't ever supposed to be able to go there, and then suddenly they go there, and he drops off Rose and her whole family, and
then a couple seasons later, Rose shows up again.
Right.
It's like...
See, rules don't matter.
Rules don't matter. But overall, I think I really like this episode. I'm very interested in what they're going to do going forward. And I actually like Dan, and I was worried about it. And I like the idea of bringing all these different characters. I think at some point in time, we're all going to have to work the Satorans and the Carvanas and all of them, and the Weeping Angels. Weeping Angels being there could change a lot.
But we have more, right? Cybermen are supposed to be there. Silence
Silence is supposed to be there too.
So,
yeah, it's very interesting what they're going to do. So, what do you think of this? Anything else?
Yeah.
What do you think of this episode and our discussion, reaction, review of it? Let us know in the comments down below. Please be nice. There's a requirement around here. We have the band hammer. I'll use it. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. Follow us on all the social media stuff, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Links are in the description down below. And until next time, Whovians, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.